So everyone, when they hear robotic surgery, the first question that comes to mind is, "अरे बाप रे, doctor नहीं करने वाला, कोई robot करने वाला, how is it going to work?" Well, that's not the case. Every now and then we do read in the paper,
Yeah.
doctors are doing cesareans purposely, unindicatedly,
Yes,
and the
yes,
numbers
yes.
are skyrocketing. Well, even patients are equally to blame. The body doesn't wait for that. That is, as you said, it's a biological clock.
Clock.
So all ladies, especially, they have something known as an ovarian reserve, which is the total number of eggs which are present in the ovaries. So they decline when the age increases.
Today, we are living in an era where females are trying to freeze their eggs at 28 but are still scared for a pap smear for cervical screening at the age of 40. We have surgeries which are being done by robots, but we are still scared of a normal delivery or a basic C section. Why is there such a big disconnect? So, today, my guest is going to break all these myths. Welcome, and I'm your host, Dr. Ronak Lakshmi Shirsat, and our guest today is Dr. Rohan Krishnakumar. He is a gold medalist and a gynec oncosurgeon and a specialist in laparoscopic and gynec oncosurgery. He is also a specialist in robotic surgery, and he is going to break this wall between your living room and the disconnect with medical facts. Welcome, Dr. Rohan. Welcome to Life in Focus.
I'd like to thank you for having me here, and I would like to also compliment you for this excellent initiative because you're doing it out of your heart to educate so many people and get them aware of these things, and you're doing it out of interest. So congratulate you and compliment you for that.
So, जब हम सुनते हैं the label of robotic surgery sounds to be something very, sci-fi and high-tech essay. So, why robotic surgery and how did your journey started? Like, how did it come to this?
How I developed interest in robotic surgery is that right from my post graduation days, I always had this fascination, for machines, how surgery is being done, hearing, reading about it, seeing in conferences. I was very fascinated. Initially, that time, endoscopy, laparoscopic surgery was just picking up, and there were very few robotic surgeons. So the term itself fascinated me, and I developed interest in learning it. So I used to attend conferences to see how it is done. Actually, from the time I heard it till the time I saw the first robotic surgery was almost 5.5 years,
Oh,
because that
huge
many
journey.
few people used to do it that time.
Okay.
And I was really fascinated by the way it was being done. Surgeon does not have to touch the patient while operating. He can sit and operate. So that fascinated me, generated my interest, and then I began when I started training in oncosurgery in gynec onco. That's when I came in touch with robot really close, and I decided I need to learn this because this is something which is going to change the definition of healthcare for ladies, and it's
Okay.
really going to benefit them in a lot of way. Now, what is robotic surgery?
Yeah.
So everyone, when they hear robot, they get terrified.
And it sounds like some creature, no? Who is like walking and talking in
Yes.
certain kind of thing.
Till today, we are all tuned to that. The typical way the doctor will be operating, he'll be touching, seeing. So everyone, when they hear robotic surgery, the first question that comes to mind is, "अरे बाप रे, doctor नहीं करने वाला, कोई robot करने वाला. How is it going to work?" Well, that's not the case.
Okay.
It's robot is just a machine. So the master is still a human.
Okay.
So usually the traditional robot that is being used nowadays has three parts basically.
Okay.
One is the surgeon's console,
Okay.
where the surgeon sits. That is a little bit away from the operating table. A traditional operating table you would have seen even in movies. A
Yeah.
patient is lying on the table, few people are standing around and operating.
But light रहता
Yeah,
है,
light
all that
रहता है.
stuff.
Exactly.
Yes.
So this is very similar in the beginning,
Okay.
but the robot has three parts: a surgeon's console, a patient cart, and an instrument cluster.
Okay.
So basically, the surgeon's control console has the main controls where the surgeon can see,
Okay.
and the hand movements of the surgeon are mimicked by the patient cart.
Oh.
So the patient cart is the one which is near the patient. That
Okay.
has four robotic arms.
अच्छा. So
Okay.
actual arms ऐसे
Yeah,
like
the
this, like
arms
that?
are like levers
Okay.
through which laparoscopy or robotic instruments, endoscopic instruments are attached. And the surgeon itself inserts these into the patients
Okay.
and then takes control of those arms.
Okay.
And those arms mimic the movements of the surgeon's arms outside.
But then it might require a lot of super precision and dexterity also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the advantage which robotic surgery offers. Now, if you see our wrist, it moves 360 degrees. You can
Yeah.
turn it completely. Same in open surgery. When you do open surgery, your hands are moving
Yes.
and you can use the entire motion.
True.
But when you do laparoscopy, the traditional laparoscopy, what happens is the end of the instruments is fixed.
Acha.
Okay. So
Okay.
robotic instruments, the end has 360-degree wrist-like movements. So
Oh.
whatever movements you do outside in the console, it's like, you have controls of a video game. What
Okay.
movements you do here, the instruments move similarly inside the patient. You decide where you have to cut. You use the instrument the way you want. The robot does not have any decision-making capabilities at all.
Okay.
It's just a machine being operated by a very well-trained surgeon who, in case if the robot malfunctions, which is very rare, can still take over and finish the surgery.
Oh.
So it's like basically when you go on an aeroplane, you don't rely on the plane to fly. Right?
Yeah.
Rely on the pilot. The pilot has to control the plane. It's that way.
But like sounds very fascinating, but then there are, this kind of myth wala videos जिसमें दिखाते हैं AI will replace and this and that. So now that you have said कि the control is still in the hand of a human, makes us feel a little bit, like safer. What in terms of precision, sir? Like what do you want to,
So-
enlighten us about?
The basic advantages are, first of all, 3D vision.
Okay.
Now, when you see with your eyes, you can see the shape, size, everything as it is. Okay, when you see through a regular endoscope, a 2D endoscope, your depth perception means you are watching a TV and operating inside the patient.
Yes.
Okay, in a traditional laparoscopy.
True.
So, in that, the depth perception is not as accurate. So, robotic surgery, it has a 3D camera.
Acha.
So, once you see in the surgeon's console, you get a 3D vision. It's like you're sitting inside the pelvis. You can analyze the depth, the distance, even the minutest structure is almost seen with 5 to 10 times magnification, minutest fibers. So you can, really do a very precision surgery. That comes to vision. Then, as I told you, the dexterity.
Yeah.
It, even in the deepest parts of the body, the instruments can easily reach and mimic the movements of your hand. So even if somewhere a particular step is difficult laparoscopically, through robotic it can be performed very easily, minimizing any damage, increasing the speed of the procedure. Tremor filtration. Now, even a normal hand, if you see, there is some tremor.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
It is.
If everyone has it. Some people have it more, especially for surgeons. As you age, this tremor increases.
Okay.
So that's when the time, your precision slightly falters.
Yeah.
So when you're doing robotic surgery, the robotic arms are not going to have tremors, nor are your tremors which you're using on the console be transmitted to the robotic arms. So it gives you that precision without any complications. Plus, for surgeons who do a lot of laparoscopy and traditional surgery, there's hours of standing. In this, you're sitting and you're operating, you're giving instructions to everybody in the OT. And it's not that the robot alone is doing it. There is going to be a surgical assistant standing close, adjusting the instruments if required. The anesthetist or the anesthesiologist who's monitoring the patient is there. And all of these make it much more safer than traditional surgery.
So, if a patient, we have to advocate them that pay a little extra for this robotic surgery. If there are 3 points a patient should consider before, opting the option of this, what should be them, sir?
Frankly speaking, in gynecology, I think gynecologists have been the most advanced in taking up minimally invasive surgery.
Okay.
Okay, because compared to other branches, other branches would still do a lot of open surgery, whereas gynec, except for delivery, cesarean, and maybe 1 or 2 more procedures, everything else has been replaced by minimally invasive surgery. And why is that? Is because, see, woman is the most important part of any family. And any surgery, traditional surgery, would require at least 6 weeks of rest. And in today's times, definitely nobody can afford it. Even before, woman, as I said, is the backbone. If a woman is in bed, the entire family is dull. Everyone's running around. So that's why gynacs had to improvise on that. So that's why there are a lot of gynecologists even shifting towards robotic surgery.
Okay.
The one thing definitely pulls back robotic surgery is the cost and the availability. Right now, it's available in very few places. Now, see, when laparoscopy started way back in the 90s, that also didn't have much take
Yeah,
up.
widespread take
Yeah,
up. Yes.
everybody used to say, "Arey, laparoscopy kaun karega? It will never replace." But today, if you see,
Almost
it's
everyone.
almost replacing traditional surgery. So similar with the robot, once more people, more installations occur, more companies get into the market, more instruments are available, it's going to become cheaper. So right now, if anybody is considering robotic surgery, that some of the illnesses related to women like gynecological malignancies, endometriosis, and very lot of adhesions, or when there's lot of everything is stuck inside after previous surgeries. These are the best cases to go for robotics. So that's one. If you're suffering from any of these things, you should consider robotic. How much rest can you afford? So robotics is going to have just 5 or 8 millimeter cuts, 2 or 3 cuts maximum, and hospital stay is just going to be 1 day. And
patient can recover fast
because of the fulcrum-like action of the robotic ports compared to the traditional laparoscopy, now they don't even cause pain in the skin stitches. So at least traditional laparoscopy, skin stitches would pain.
Yes.
This, because it moves so well and it's got a fulcrum to it, it does not cause any swelling or pain even around the skin stitches. So that pain is also not there. There's hardly any bleeding. There's no pain. You're back to work probably from the next day. You can start doing your own activities. So that's the second thing to consider. And the third thing is your surgical outcomes. Definitely, surgical outcomes are going to be much higher and much better when robotic surgery is performed by a trained robotic surgeon.
So, sir, like moving from the robotic surgery to the traditional thing, the delivery, the childbirth aspect of the thing, there is still a debate going on कि normal delivery opt करना चाहिए कि C-section. There are females, someone, who opts naturally for a C-section. She's like, she has tocophobia, fear of childbirth, and she wants कि नहीं, I want a minimal scar, I don't want to lose perineum. On the other hand, there are even educated females who insist on a normal delivery even if they are in problem, they are indicated for C-section. So what do you do to educate when a patient is pregnant, and what options are given to her?
Right, so this is a very important question, especially every now and then we do read in the paper,
Yeah.
doctors are doing cesareans purposely, unindicatedly, and the numbers are skyrocketing. Well, even patients are equally to blame. Like you said tocophobia, that's one of the main thing. And second thing is that today there are a lot of patients struggling with infertility.
Sure.
And when they conceive after years of struggle, they're already so scared. They've been waiting, trying for almost a decade. Then when they want to deliver, they don't want any risk. So they naturally tend to opt for. That's the second reason why it's become a little bit more. And third reason is the medico-legal aspect.
Yeah.
Earlier, some complications are known to happen during normal delivery. And if they do happen, some can be avoided, some can't. So one has to be ready for that. So many medico-legal cases even, scare the doctor who want to err on the right side. And they would, rather do cesarean and have a healthy mother and child rather than, get into a complication. And then one more reason is that there's so much medical information flooded.
I know.
There's so much
Sometimes
negative.
not even necessary.
ऐसे नहीं करने का, वो ऐसे नहीं करने का, ऐसे किया तो ऐसे होगा. So everyone is already scared. By the time they reach the 9th month, they are like, doctor, enough. Now just give us a baby safely. You do whatever you want, even cesarean is okay. So that's why the numbers are really increasing.
Okay.
Every OPD, at least 2 ladies who are very fit for vaginal delivery. Okay. They have a good pelvis, what do you say, as we say in medical terms. Roomy pelvis for delivery. Baby's weight is okay. Head is also pretty down. But they would still, with the fear of an internal checkup or just the fear of delivery, they would say, no, we don't want, please do Caesar. So what I would say is that always counseling starts right from home. So when you get pregnant rather, like you asked me, what can we do to prepare people for, all this? So it should start from home. Discuss with your friends, your elders, mothers, mother-in-law, someone who has undergone a vaginal delivery or a cesarean, how they have felt, how the internal checkups are, and how the pain is, and what are the recovery times after vaginal delivery, after cesarean. That helps you mentally prepare.
Okay.
Follow only credible information. Don't read and believe everything that is there in Google, or follow every reel that says, this can go wrong, that
This
can
can
go wrong.
go
1,000 things can go wrong. Then third would be select a place which has facilities, good amount of facilities for a normal delivery, like a pediatrician, doctor on call all the time, an anesthetist, a functional OT,
Yeah.
blood bank nearby. Select a place, and also many of the times now, there is this nice thing of antenatal classes. Some hospitals have it in their own delivery programs, in their antenatal programs itself. Some classes are taken outside. When you're aware of something, you're not scared of it. You get scared when you don't know what's going to happen. So attending that is a must wherever it is. Second is tocophobia.
Yeah.
You say, fear of labor pain. Now that's, everyone is scared of it. There are ample of options now, right from gases which you can inhale during labor, which eases the pain. Plus, there is water bath. There are some exercises during labor which can help. These all help to reduce the pain. The best way, like I think you must have definitely heard, the best way is something which is coming up very well, which has been there since a long time. It's epidural analgesia. Now that is so good that you hardly feel any pain in the entire process of labor. It can be taken right from before the pain begins, and even post delivery, it can be used for pain relief. So that is very safe, very excellent. And I think everybody should read about it and learn about it, and ask your doctor whether you are fit for epidural, whether you can go for it, whether facilities are available in the hospital. That definitely takes care of that. And there are hardly any complications. And many times it so also happens that during epidural also everyone's worried there'll be some complication. How can delivery be there without pain? Especially the elders in the family.
हाँ, they'll feel कि पेन नहीं है तो कैसे हो रहा
तो
है?
दर्द लेने से ही माँ बन सकते हैं, ऐसा भी फिक्स नहीं
But
है.
sir, वो तो होता है misnomer. It's quite,
Yeah.
like.
So my wife has delivered
Why?
normally,
Okay.
vaginally both the time. Then she has taken epidural both the time,
Right.
and she's enjoyed.
Okay.
And I do recommend it to almost all my patients. Certain conditions are there which require cesarean, which it's non-negotiable, as you said. One of them is a placenta, that is जो बच्चे का वार बोलते हैं हिंदी में ना, that
Bra-
placenta, if it's covering the mouth of the uterus,
Okay.
that is a absolute indication for cesarean, where you cannot try for normal delivery at all.
Yes.
So that is one thing in which you should not even think of. Second is, if at 9 months labor pains have started and the baby is transverse, means the head is not down.
Yeah.
The head is on one side and the legs are on one side. Now that is also, you cannot have a normal delivery in that, and you shouldn't even try if labor pain has started and baby is still transverse.
Yes.
The third is, if previous has been a cesarean section with a vertical scar. Now, this is a medical thing which many might not understand. So that's why we always insist on our patients bringing the discharge card of their previous cesarean. What type of cut was taken on the uterus. That makes a difference, because now in the last 30-40 years, it's a transverse cut where you can try for normal delivery. So if your first cesarean has been with a straight cut, then definitely
You
it's a no. The fourth would be if the baby is ulta, breech, what
Yeah.
we say,
The
buttocks
legs are
are,
down.
or the legs are down and the head is up. So in first time, ladies who are first time pregnant and are going to deliver, breech is a indication for cesarean. And there are a couple of more, but they are absolutely medical, like if there's some growth or fibroid or
Yeah.
cancer on the cervix. Of course, in labor, if labor pains are going on and the baby's heartbeats suddenly tend to drop, and they're not recovering with regular measures, then definitely it's non-negotiable. You have to.
But then, sir, the take-home point is like it has to be a gynecologist call, right? The treating physician's call.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Trust your doctor at that time. See, no doctor I know would purposely do a cesarean, just to get free before, or just to run home. That's, at least the people I know don't do it. Unless, some relatives, patients are insisting. I'll just share a story with you. One patient just last week, came. She was showing 9 months in a hospital in Badlapur,
Okay.
and at the 9th month, she was told there that you're not going to deliver. Probably she had diabetes,
But
big baby. So the gynaec there decided, I don't think you're going to deliver. You please go for cesarean. So she wanted a place where NICU is closed and all that. So she came here. And
Okay.
she came and said, Abhi 11 baje ko muhurat hai. Before that, you do it.
Oh God.
Okay,
So people
so
still do that, sir?
yeah, they still do it. Before 11 o'clock, you do the delivery, and she came at 9:30. So she was accompanied by her in-laws and parents. Husband was not there. So we spoke and we said, okay, 11 o'clock ke pehle karna hai. So we also have to hurry.
Hurry.
We have
Yeah.
to make the OT ready, assess blood tests, and then do. So in the meantime, the husband came and he said, sir, आपने check किया, normal possible नहीं है क्या? So that's the time when I said, ki, look, you have told
Yeah.
that you
You want
to
a
do
cesarean.
and do before 11. I have not told you to do cesarean. If you want to do normal delivery, we'll induce the labor pain. You discuss amongst yourself and tell us. So then he said, नहीं नहीं जो भी आपको ठीक लगे आप कीजिए. I said, नहीं मुझे कुछ ठीक नहीं लग रहा है. मुझे ठीक लगना है तो I will induce the labor pain.
Yeah.
See if pain is progressing, then do. So even when patient is saying, we would still prefer for trying for normal if
Normal,
everything
which
is okay.
Yes.
So I said, you have to admit and write. You discuss with her and write and give. You are insisting do cesarean, so we are doing it. Take my opinion, we will go for this.
We'll
Then,
trial
yeah,
of labor.
trial of labor. Then they decided, ki, nahi, nahi, 11 o'clock is more important, we'll go for cesarean. At that time, we also can't do anything.
Anything. Yes. So, sir, now to the most uncomfortable part. We are, like nowadays, it's like we are all on a biological clock, especially the females. And then people wake up and realize at 35 that, my egg reserve is down, the AMH is not normal. Or there are many instances on infertility even in the younger patients.
Yeah.
So, is there a way, sir? Are there lifestyle related disorders, or is it just a kind of an epidemic which is happening right now? Or what are the procedures or measures young girls should take at an earlier level who are not going to get married in the traditional era?
So it's a very relevant question in today's times. Now, of course, what we are doing, we are in a time when there's competition.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options to choose from. Our lifestyle has definitely changed. We have more women working in the working force, contributing in all the ways. And by the time someone finishes their education, gets a job, starts making decent money, and just getting settled, they are around 28, 30 now.
Yeah.
So at that time, you feel, no, you want some time for yourself, you want to enjoy. That's a common story with many couples. Even marriages are late, and even if marriages are early, they would like to delay pregnancy for some time, which when you see from the point of view of their goals and achievements, it's a good thing.
Yes.
They have more time to achieve what they want, do what they want. But the body doesn't wait for that. That is, as you said, it's a biological clock.
Clock.
So all ladies, especially, they have something known as an ovarian reserve, which is the total number of eggs which are present in the ovaries. So they decline when the age increases.
Okay.
So we might want to achieve a lot of things before we start a family, but our body doesn't feel the same. Many ladies have low egg reserve when they decide suddenly at 35, okay, now I will try to, get pregnant. That's when they suddenly realize, oh, we're already late. So definitely one should not sacrifice their careers or this, but keep in mind that this is something they should think of, maybe not immediately, but they should have it at least by the age of 30, 32, they should think of conception.
Okay.
And if they still can't do that for any reasons, say medical reasons, career reasons, or they're just, wanting to first get settled and then proceed for pregnancy, there are very innovative and new options earlier which were considered luxury, but today they are very affordable and achievable. So that is something known as egg freezing.
Yeah.
We are reading about that in the
There's a lot
papers
of
as well.
yeah.
Some celebrity at the age of 40 has got pregnant,
Yes.
or someone whose previous child has died now has a pregnancy.
Yeah.
So these are things which we should at least know about, and we should educate ourselves about. So earlier egg freezing was not very easily available, but I should say with the rise in the IVF centers, now you can see every road has probably a infertility or a test tube baby center. So it's become very accessible, and it is very simple. not very, I mean, probably it may be as expensive as one of the smartphones that we use nowadays. No? So if we can buy a smartphone, definitely we can invest some money for our health as well. So it's very simple. It's not got any problems. So it's like a bank. Egg freezing is a process similar to test tube baby, where the eggs are taken out and they're frozen and kept. They can be safely kept for almost 30, 40 years.
It's a long time.
That's a long time,
Yeah.
and they won't have any problems. So you can just freeze them and continue with your regular lifestyle, probably in your work, or if you just don't want pregnancy right now. Whenever you plan your family after marriage, if you have a late marriage, you try that time naturally or by the other methods available. And then if it's not happening, or if that time the eggs are not there even for test tube baby, you have this as a bag.
And so, sir, like always said कि जो onus of fertility रहता है, traditionally it is on females, you know. There were times it was shown in movies कि male को तो कभी, you know, like they are not even checked per se. But is male infertility a real factor nowadays?
Yeah, good point that you touched upon. Male infertility has really risen.
Oh.
Almost 40 to 50% of the times the male partner is responsible for infertility. Traditionally, it has been like that. Like
Yeah.
you said, many a times the lady would be subjected to all the investigations, tests, and then, blamed. She's the reason why pregnancy is not staying. But now it has drastically changed. Like
Okay.
at least in areas like ours, where education levels are high, we have, when the couple walks in, many a times the male partner himself asks, are you going to give me any tests, or should I do any tests? Or sometimes even it so happens after a year of treatment, still pregnancy is not staying. Though we have tested both the partners, we tend to, have a few extra tests on the female. So that time the male will again ask, see, doctor, mere test ko 1 saal ho gaya hai. Should I repeat it? So that way, at least in our place, it has improved.
Yeah.
There are still many places from where we do get patients, wherein, the male partner is not investigated, or the male or the husband does not accompany the lady to an infertility OPD as well. She would usually be accompanied by her mother or the mother-in-law who would get. And when you ask them, "Kya husband kidhar hai?" we'll explain him also. So they would coolly say, "Ki nahi, wo nahi aayega." And you even advise them their tests. They wouldn't have done it for 6 months until we insist, "Aage we won't do treatment till we see those tests." Then they would do it and come. So that's also slowly changing in a better way. Lifestyle definitely makes a big impact. And everyone is working night shift. One partner is working day, one is working night, so they don't have any time together. And yes, that's where male infertility plays a very important and a crucial part and should not be missed.
So, sir, any, like we talk about egg freezing for females, is there such a path for the males also, like who delay things for, and does age is a factor for them also?
So, till recently, it was believed that age does not affect male fertility.
Yeah.
Because, which is actually true till a certain extent. Only beyond the age of 50 or 55 does there is a slight chance of increase in the possibility of some abnormalities occurring due to the sperm. Otherwise, sperm is a very resistant thing. It does not cause more damage in
age-wise.
Age-wise, the males don't have a bag. That's the thing. So, but males also can freeze their sperms, which can safely stay for a long time. We must have all seen the movie Vicky Donor, in which he freezes sperms, which others use when he's a sperm donor. So like that, even for our own use, we can. Many times people are diagnosed with some cancers of the testes or of other organs which require them to undergo radiation or chemotherapy, which damages their sperm count. So they are advised to freeze sperms before they start the treatment. Or sometimes now, when everyone's working, so it so happens that the husband or the male partner is living in some other country or is on a ship, merchant navy or in the armed forces, and can't come routinely for treatment. So they usually freeze their sperms and keep. So we can use that along with the female for insemination or any other procedures if required.
So, sir, endometriosis is a very, very lesser known thing. And often it takes almost about 7 to 10 years for a female to get diagnosed. And then जो pain होता है for every menstrual cycle, it is like traditionally घर में भी बड़ी औरतें सब लोग बोलते हैं कि अरे होने ही वाला है pain, you are in those days of the month. Traditionally कोई भी ऐसे like सादे सादे treatment ले लो. Actually, the time which is taken by a girl or a female to come and get diagnosed with endometriosis is a long period.
Yeah.
But is it rising? Is it turning into a pain pandemic or something?
I recently came across an article which says a woman visits at least 8 gynecologists or 8 doctors, you can say, before she is diagnosed of endometriosis for her pain.
Oh,
So it's that big a problem in today's times. And me being specially interested in treating endometriosis, I can talk for days together regarding this. There are so many instances. Traditionally, in every household, it is said that periods mein to pain ho gayi. Use a hot water bag.
Yeah, true.
You take this painkiller and
That's
sleep.
it.
I have literally patients coming in the OPD and having tears when they describe their pain. When I ask them about pain during menses, they start crying. Before I even know that they have endometriosis,
Sure.
they would cry and say, "Ki, do whatever you want, but just stop this pain."
Acha.
That much they are
Scared of the pain.
scared of the pain, and that much, I mean, they are ignored because everybody would say, "Ki, just bear with it. वैसे ज़्यादा कर रहा है. It's not that much. We also have had pain." And plus, women also ignore it.
Yeah.
Think, if I take rest and if I get operated or something, who will take care of kids? Who will take care of family? So that way, it is very much ignored, and a lot of suffering with endometriosis.
So briefly, if you want to talk to our audience about what endometriosis is, because like we say, there is not much of awareness.
Right.
People are still learning about it.
So endometrium is the lining inside the uterus where the pregnancy stays. So that is the lining responsible for the monthly periods. It grows in response to hormones, and when the hormones reduce, you get your periods.
True.
That is chums, what everybody calls us. So some people, maybe genetically or because of some other reasons, have this endometrial tissue. Those glands are there outside the uterus.
Oh,
So it is basically an ectopic endometrium.
okay.
So if it is in the ovary, it's known as an endometrioma. If it
Okay.
is in the uterus, it is an adenomyoma. So what happens is this lining is very similar to the lining inside the uterus. So that also grows along with the lining inside the uterus.
So every month it will
Every
grow
month
under
it
the
will keep
hormone.
growing.
Okay.
And when there is bleeding, there's bleeding in both places. So the part inside the uterus, the blood, whatever comes, goes out through the vagina.
Fine.
So this bleeding in the ovaries or inside the muscles of the uterus has no place to go out.
Yes.
So over a long period of time, it gets accumulated and forms endometriosis. And usually when there is blood, everything starts to stick inside. You see, even if we have
Yeah.
bleeding, after some time it
Coagulate.
becomes sticky.
Yes.
Must have noticed. So that way everything begins to stick inside, and then it starts spreading. Now that is the most scariest part. Usually till now we thought only cancer could spread.
Spread.
But endometriosis is very similar to cancer, except that it's not cancer. So it has all symptoms very similar to it. It will spread to the sides, the urine pipes, the rectum, or the motion pipe, the intestines we call. These two are the most commonly affected areas outside the uterus. And we have seen such a big rise in these in the last 7 or 8 years. It's compressing the urine pipes, damaging the kidneys. It is growing inside the intestines, causing problems in passing motion. And it's even found sometimes in the lungs. So you
So
don't know how much.
metastasize.
Yeah, it's spreading, it's metastasizing. So that's why at least everyone should know and not ignore. And one more thing which I would like to add is choose the right doctor for, make sure they know what endometriosis is and they are good in treating it, because every patient of endometriosis is different. Not everyone needs the same treatment.
Okay.
One trying for pregnancy will have a different line of treatment. One not trying for pregnancy, family completed, will have a different type of treatment. And a teenager will have a different type of treatment. So it's going to be tailor-made. So only one expert who's knowing how to treat all these age groups should be considered for.
So is this like, same thing? Ki, jaise, like we spoke about endometriosis, it's on the rise. Is PCOS also on the rise?
Yeah, PCOS is much on the rise.
It's
Not
very much
because
talked
of us,
about.
because of radiologists, I should say. Because every radiology report would read, many follicles in the ovary. So, which is actually right. They report only what they see. But many practitioners interpret the report. They don't interpret the symptoms.
Okay.
They label somebody. It's wrong to label somebody actually just on a
On a regular.
sonography report
Yes.
that you have PCOD. There are a spectrum of symptoms. You have to have irregular periods. You have to have features of
PCOD.
more hormones like facial hair growth, some discoloration, and you have to have a certain number of egg count, or the volume of the ovaries should be beyond a certain number to actually be labeled as that. So, of course, PCOD in general is also on the rise because of our diet.
Okay.
We have shifted to a Western diet compared to our traditional diet, and even what we eat at home is more of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So that plus lifestyle has become sedentary, stress levels have increased. All this has led to a lot of hormonal imbalance,
Okay.
and the number of obese people have increased. So that leads to more hormonal disbalances, and PCOD definitely has increased because of that.
So is PCOD and reason for infertility, sir? Many people keep on asking that once we diagnose them in the ultrasound room, we actually don't diagnose them. We just say ki PCOD jaisa lag raha hai.
Label them.
Yeah, you just go and meet someone who can guide you through the process. So their immediate question is ki am I going to face infertility?
No, it won't cause infertility. It will cause some difficulty in getting pregnant.
Okay.
Most of the time, say around 30-40% of the times, couples would conceive naturally. They would have irregular cycles, but when they meet you, they will come with a pregnancy positive test.
Yes.
So that happens many of the times. Certain times when periods are very much delayed, that happens because of delayed ovulation.
Okay.
And when we all know that the egg stays alive in the body only for 24 hours.
Yes.
And if in that 24 hours fertilization doesn't take place, like if contact has not taken place and sperms and egg don't meet, pregnancy is not going to stay. So in PCOD, when the cycles are irregular, this ovulation time is not fixed.
Okay.
So that's why couples tend to find it difficult to get pregnant, because it's not compulsory that you would have had contact when ovulation is taking place. So they require some basic treatment. Of course, diet and lifestyle is the most important. Along with that, certain medications to induce ovulation, monitor the growth of the egg, they require. And few of them, of course, if there are multiple factors and very severe PCOD, they do face challenges in fertility. But nevertheless, they can be very easily treated.
There is a teenager girl, like pretty much normal, not overweight, 18, 19-year-old. She complains of pain also, and she complains of irregular menses also. So she could be either endometriotic or PCO, like polycystic ovaries, or she could be just normal. So how should she proceed? What should be the first step she should take?
Many times we face this situation in the OPD. Someone would label them PCOD and send you go meet a gynec.
Yeah.
Or someone would diagnose endometriosis. So just 1 or 2 irregular periods in your teenagers and pain during menses is always not going to be PCOD or endometriosis respectively. So you don't, all these videos and explanations are not to scare. It's just to educate. So it's just that you need to be aware. During the teenagers, many times the HPO axis, we call it in gynec, that is the hypothalamo-pituitary ovarian axis.
Yes.
So it's the signals which your ovary sends to brain sends to the hormone producing areas, and they send it to the ovaries. So that axis takes time to develop.
Okay.
So that starts at menarche. When we say period starts, that is menarche. That starts that time, and it takes some time to adjust, develop, come into the rhythm. So having irregular cycles of frequent bleeding during teenagers is absolutely a normal thing. If your hormonal results are okay, like thyroid and everything is okay, then definitely it's very much normal. And few of the periods can be very painful, which need not be worried. They can be easily managed with basic painkillers, what you can say. If they're controlled by that, one need not have to worry at all.
And sir, then we come to the, the biggest health burden, which we call now cancer. And being a gynecologist, you know that cervical cancer is the most, after breast cancer, it is one of the most highly rising cancer in females. And then there is about this, there are a lot of things people don't know, people get confused, people don't know when to opt for surgery, when to opt for chemo, when to opt for radio. There are a lot of myths also, a lot of videos going about on Instagram where we say, people even opt for, I can say bunking the treatment, considering alternative methods and all. So, sir, how to counsel these patients, and is the burden real? Is cervical cancer or breast cancer that popular, that
Not
highly rising?
the burden, let me tell you, ma'am, it's really, really, really high than what we see. Probably what we are seeing nowadays is still just the tip of the iceberg. And there's a whole iceberg beneath the ocean, and we are not able to tap it. Not only breast and cervix, even endometrial cancer is so much on the rise. One most important thing is that healthcare has improved. Your
Yes.
lifestyle has improved a bit compared to what it was 100 years back. People are living longer.
Yeah.
Women are living longer. More women are attaining menopause.
Okay.
So the incidences of all these malignancies are rising. There is a recent, maybe a year back, probably in Times of India, an article came. By 2050, India is going to have the highest population of people above 55, 60. Right now, we are a young population. But after 2025, all of us are going to be that. And our population is not growing at the same rate.
Okay.
So the incidence of all of this is going to increase much more than what it is already.
Okay.
And one of the important factors is that cervical cancer and breast cancer and endometrial cancer, all are lifestyle based cancers.
True.
Cervical cancers occurs because of poor hygiene, recurrent HPV infections, and poor screening
Yes.
strategies that we have in our country.
Yeah.
Second is endometrial cancer, which has proven links to obesity, hypertension, and diabetes, which are also on the rise. Right? And late pregnancies, late marriages, no pregnancies. These are all risk factors for these cancers, which are all there in us. That's why we are seeing this spike in all of this.
So, sir, if you want to give a broader message about screening, which, we also insist ki dete rehna chahiye because it is not penetrating as much as that is needed.
Yes.
So, what would you like to say, sir?
So, I think women are really lucky. God has really blessed them because the two most common cancers they have, breast cancer and cervical cancer, both have proven screening tests. No other cancer has a proven screening test, none for males, no other organs of the body. Only these two have, which can predict कि आगे जाके शायद हो सकता है
Okay.
cancer. So it can be treated or monitored in precancerous, even before it becomes precancerous.
Okay.
So that's why we should utilize this and get screened. Now what happens is we are traditionally, groomed in that way where they say कि test क्यों करना है, तकलीफ नहीं है, अभी मुझे कुछ problem नहीं है, why do you want me to go and screen myself? So screening is done only for that. जब तकलीफ नहीं है तभी screen करेंगे तो समझेगा कि आगे तकलीफ होने वाला है कि नहीं. And it's really simple, painless, not expensive at all, and so easily available. Means every gynecologist will do a pap smear,
Yes.
and every radiologist, many of them will have a mammography, and it takes minutes to finish. And it need not even be done very frequently. Pap smear, if it's liquid based, it has to be done once every 3 years.
Hmm.
And mammography after a certain age for some indications, maybe yearly.
Yeah.
And that's
all.
That's it. So I would definitely want every woman, whoever's hearing this, at least spread the message. If it's not for you, spread the message that screening is going to help.
Okay.
And many of the foreign countries where screening is in their national program, they have managed to reduce the incidence of cervical cancer and breast cancer with proper screening.
And sir, about the HPV vaccination also, it is recently included in our national immunization program. Some people do ask why to give it to the boys as well.
Right.
So what is the standardized, way to take it? Who should take it and up to what age?
So HPV, let me just brief you about HPV. HPV or human papilloma virus. That's one virus which is sexually transmitted.
Okay.
Means it's transmitted from males to females.
Okay.
Apart from all the tensions, male, gay, female, this is also something
That
This is
is
transferring. So, who are the ideal candidates? First, I'll say why HPV is important. Now, HPV is known to cause one of the main causes for cervical cancer.
okay.
Apart from the other cancers, what's that it causes? Cervical cancer is one of the most frequent thing that it causes. Now, there are 4 high-risk strains of HPV. That is 6, 11, 16, and 18. These are the high-risk HPV strains. Every lady, say after sexual contact, there's a terminology which says almost 98% of women
Okay.
are infected with HPV.
Oh,
Okay, so that's a very common thing.
common.
Not all will get cancer. Maybe 3 or 4% will carry it long term. Baki 95% will clear it
Clear it.
on its own. Their body's immune system will clear it. Few will carry it. Out of that, 1% may develop cancer.
Okay.
So it's not that everyone who has a HPV infection is going to have cancer. Only few of it will have. Now, these vaccines that are available, they protect against infections with these strains of HPV.
Okay.
Right now, there are 3 vaccines available. One is the 2-strain vaccine that covers 16 and 18.
Okay.
One is the 4-strain vaccine, which is popularly known as Gardasil.
Yeah.
So that has 6, 11, 16, 18. That has
Covers all the
high-risk strains. And the new one that is Gardasil 9, it has 9 strains.
Okay.
So that protects against 9 strains of HPV. All of them are equally effective, not very expensive, 2,000 to 3,500 range.
Okay.
And the doses are like any other vaccine. The ideal age for girls to take it would be in their teenagers. Now, FOXI, which is the Federation of Obs-Gynec Societies in India, which is the national body of gynecologists in India. See, India does not have a central policy on vaccination for HPV.
Okay.
Like we have a national immunization for kids. So all the kids are given that vaccine. We have also received. So like that HPV, there's no policy form like other nations. So FOXI has formed a guideline on which we can easily give. That is, for girls, ideal age would be between 9 to 15.
Okay.
That's the ideal age.
Okay.
So between that age group, you need only 2 doses.
Acha.
The first dose and a dose 2 months apart.
Booster kind of.
Yeah, that's enough. Okay. And for those above 15 till the age of 45, you need 3 doses. The first dose, the one 2 months apart, and one after 6 months. Okay, it has no other side effects, no other problem. Beyond 45, the effect of the vaccine is not proven. Means you take it or you don't take it, the exposure has already occurred. The idea of giving it to teenage girls is before sexual contact.
Okay.
And at teens, they have still a long time to develop a good immunity. So that is the right age. So the age group of 9 to 45 females should definitely take it.
Okay.
Okay. And the second one, whether boys should also be included, definitely boys should also be included. Why? Because as I said, it's the males who transmit the infection more often. Second, they are also at risk of penile cancers, anal cancers, warts, which are caused due to HPV.
Okay.
So when you vaccinate the boys, the transmission will be less. And their incidences of cancer will also go down. So many countries like UK, Australia, they have an immunization policy for boys as well. So I think both
Should get
be,
vaccinated.
but at least females. If we are not ready for boys yet, at least females should take control of their health and get vaccinated.
So, sir, prior to this, we had asked our Instagram followers, like we are coming up with such a podcast. So, aap logon ko, like we'll ask one question, which will be commonly asked by all of them in the comments. And that question was about white discharge.
Okay.
So, actually, females don't know whether it is physiological, always is it pathological, when to deem whether it is pathological. So, like, can you please enlighten us on this?
So this is one of the most common things we see in the OPD.
Yes.
And there are women coming so many times for white discharge. Many times, in some age groups, white discharge is common.
Yeah.
If it is not smelling or if it is not causing irritation and itching around, then it's physiological. And most of the times during the time of ovulation or in the latter half of the menstrual cycle, some women do experience more discharge, which is physiological.
Okay.
Okay. And many a times fungal infections do cause a lot of white discharge, especially now because of the commercial marketing of all these vaginal washes, different products that are used for vaginal hygiene. So they alter the normal flora in the vagina and cause repeated fungal infections. And
It's
what
not
happens is
indicated
they are not
there.
indicated very frequently.
Okay.
So what happens is many times these ladies would go to a regular doctor or even to the pharmacist and say white discharge ho raha hai. And without examination, they are handed
The vaginal
antifungals. And they start using it. They go twice, thrice, 4 times. And what happens is that further deteriorates the condition. That causes resistance to the regular medicines. So now we are having patients who are battling white discharge since years,
Oh, wow.
and the regular medicines are not working against them. So that's why it should be very cautiously evaluated by a gynecologist or a person known to treat white discharge well, even a general practitioner who examines and then decides whether treatment is required or not. That's actually the right way to go. The newer things you must have heard, vaginal rejuvenation, that sometimes helps these ladies.
Oh. So, like, if, sir, we are just taking a call to action.
Yeah.
So, like, if you guys really have some questions or you need any mythbusters, please
Yes.
comment below. So, sir, can you, like, reach out to you?
Definitely, you can ask or at least, discuss with a doctor or your colleague who is known to a doctor.
Yeah. So, sir, moving on to the lighter part of this talk. This is a rapid fire.
Yeah.
We just do it for some fun after so much of heavy, like talk and education about, female health. PCOS usually gets cured after marriage. Is it true or false?
Absolutely false.
Hair removal creams for intimate areas, they cause darkening or they can lead to cancer. Is it a myth or it's true?
They may cause darkening, maybe because of some burns or some irritation, but leading to cancer, no.
No.
Cancer.
So, there is a myth कि a woman can get pregnant. She cannot get pregnant if she is, being intimate when her periods are going on. So, is it true or false?
Yeah, it's true most of the time. Just if during period you have intercourse, which I think many must not be having,
Yeah.
but still, even if you do, there's very less chance that you will get pregnant.
And sir, if you want to name one single food item which is like an absolute no, all the females should avoid it from their diet.
Yeah, I think it should be sugar.
And the last question we just spoke about are intimate washes a yes or a no?
Most of the times, no. I think plain water cleaning and maintaining a proper perineal hygiene is better than using intimate washes, because in the long term, they cause more dryness, more alteration in the regular bacterial flora, more fungal infections. So that should be a no and reserved only for specific occasions.
And so then something about you, which is, like your go-to guilty pleasure after a long surgery or a very heavy OPD day.
Recently, I think it is going back home and reading some, very interesting spiritual books that I'm getting into. That's my go-to right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't have been a gynec-onco surgeon, what you would have been?
Frankly, I can't imagine me doing anything else. Maybe I would have been a traveler.
Oh.
I would have been.
So, sir, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Yes.
And any last message you want to give to our audience?
Yeah, so this is a very good initiative, and one must use these videos for educating oneself and not be scared. And see, there are all these things being made available to you only to make you realize that your health is in your control, and we should not ignore it, and take steps at the right time in the right way, get in touch with the right people to get guided correctly. So don't ignore your health and prioritize that, because today, which is a very age-old saying, health is wealth. You are healthy, you can do much more and contribute much more.
Wow, Dr. Rohan, today's conversation was really a masterclass. From the high-tech world of robotics, we even came and reached to understand our own body. We broke myths about a basic cervical vaccine or also about understanding our own fertility. So to our viewers, if you want to know any such more details or you want to break any myths which are related to women health, please comment, like, share and subscribe, and Dr. Rohan's details will be in the captions below. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay focused.